Hello everyone and welcome to Rewind Reviews. In this video I'm taking a look at something that I was really looking forward to this year, and that is Knuckles. The TV show, not the... Just move on. Based on the Sega video game character and released in 2024, this Sonic the Hedgehog spin-off series follows Knuckles the Echidna as he teaches Deputy Wade Whipple the techniques and the ways of the Echidna warrior. With series directors Carol Banker, Jeff Fowler, Joe Matacone, Brandon Trost and Jed Wright, series writers Toby Asher, John Whittington, Brian Schachter and James Madisky, the 6-part series features Idris Elba, Adam Pally, Kid Cudi, Ellie Taylor, Stockard Channing, Edie Patterson, Rory McCann, Christopher Lloyd, Alice Wren-Tregening, Julian Barrett and Carrie Elwes. I really enjoyed the first two Sonic the Hedgehog movies from Paramount Pictures. In fact, the reviews that I did for both of those movies are some of the earliest videos that I did for this channel. At this point in time, I have yet to do a review for Sonic the Hedgehog 3. I have seen it. I went to go and see it last night. That's all I'm going to say, but I do have a load of thoughts on it. And with most franchises now feeling the need to extend outside of just big screen outings, and the fact that most movie studios seem to have access to their own streaming services, we have seen a big increase in TV series spin-offs. So it seemed only logical that Knuckles the Echidna, who was one of the more popular characters that was introduced in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and voiced by Idris Elba, would get his own TV series. And from what we were seeing from the trailers, it did look like a really good, fun and action-packed family series. But upon its release, the reaction to it was a little bit, shall we say, divisive. But I tried not to let the reactions that I was seeing online for the show influence my decision on whether or not to watch this show. I was excited for it, I was looking forward to it, and I did want to check it out, because it's always better to do that. Always make up your own minds, folks. And while I will say that this show does have its good points, and there are some things that I did quite enjoy, I do understand where a lot of that negative criticism has come from. Knuckles is about the Red Echidna trying to find his purpose in life after completing his mission in Sonic 2. And that purpose comes along in the form of Wade Whipple, the deputy of Green Hills who is attempting to compete in a competitive bowling tournament. So Knuckles takes it upon himself to teach him the ways of the Echidna. But hot on their trail is a duo of former G.U.N agents who want his power for themselves. It's not exactly the story that most people watching this show, including me, were expecting this to be about. What's the first thing you think of when it comes to Knuckles the Echidna? That's right, bowling. I had a ton of ideas and theories surrounding what it is that they could have done with this show and what they could have set up as well. There was so much potential for this series and so much going for it, but unfortunately, I did find the show quite disappointing. And it did leave a lot to be desired. Essentially, the story, told over 6 half-hour episodes, is split into 2 plots. The Knuckles plot of him trying to find his purpose and being pursued by G.U.N, and Wade's plot of him wanting to take part in this competitive bowling tournament and becoming a warrior. The basis for both of these stories could work really well together and complement each other, and form a solid foundation for both of these characters to grow. The problem is, though, the series kind of decides to focus on one character more than the other, and it does become quite unbalanced. And unfortunately, it isn't the character with his name in the title. Yeah, when this series was released, I kept seeing a lot of complaints online from a lot of people saying that Knuckles was barely in it. Now, I don't normally buy into a lot of those kind of reviews, but I was seeing some from even critics and reviewers and YouTubers that I do watch and I do respect, that were saying the exact same thing, and it did make me a little bit worried. And for the first episode, I really didn't understand what people were talking about, as Knuckles is front and centre, and I was really enjoying it. Episode 2 was a little bit more balanced between him and Wade, and the same goes for episode 3, which made sense as it was going into Wade's backstory and we meet his family. But I was hoping that that was what it was going to be throughout the rest of the series. Episode 4 is where it changes, as the focus does go off Knuckles to the point where he only appears right at the beginning and right at the end. Not unless you count Wade dressing up as him. And the focus just does not go back to Knuckles at all. It stays with Wade and his story, and Knuckles takes a back seat. This is basically what we feared the Sonic the Hedgehog movie was going to be like, and fortunately for that movie it wasn't, and it was all the better for it. I don't mind Wade as a character. I liked him in the 2 films, and I do think that Adam Pally is good as him, and in a cartoonish way he can be quite funny. And since Wade is much more prominent in this, there is a lot more required of him, and performance wise I do think that Adam Pally is really good again, and he does show more dimensions to the character. And that meme that just took over the internet for a small while, the flames of disaster! I do wonder if the kingdom of Soliana and Silver and Blaze do exist in this world. His world. Anyway, but as fun as Wade can be and as funny as Adam Pally can be as him, he is not who we are watching this show for. And having the show focus more on him, his life and his family over Knuckles, it is disappointing. But as for Knuckles himself, I do think that how they've portrayed him in this show is really good once again. They definitely made him a lot more comedic in this as opposed to honourable and serious, which won't sit right with everyone, but outside of that, I love his look, I love his new hat, and Idris once again absolutely knocks it out of the park. I was hoping to see a little bit more of his backstory, and I did like that we see this almost spiritual side to him, and we do get to meet one of his ancestors, voiced by a very underutilised Christopher Lloyd. Plus, episode 4 has one of the strangest and most creative components of the entire live-action Sonic the Hedgehog franchise, and that's even going far beyond the dance sequence from Sonic the Hedgehog 2. It is a full-on rock opera sequence that tells both us and Wade what it is that Knuckles has been through and his history. It's so random, but I did enjoy it. Plus, Iblis makes an appearance, at least I think it was meant to be Iblis. We've got to see Silver Blaze and Mephiles at some point, that would be awesome. Just keep Elise away. We do not need that scene in live action. You know which scene I'm talking about.
No, God! No, God, please, no! No!
Anyway, I did like the cast for the most part. I really enjoyed Stockard Channing as Wade's mum, and I did like her scenes with Knuckles. I thought Carrie Elwes was so much fun as Wade's very British father. Is that really what you guys in the US think all those Brits are like? We don't all drink tea, you know. I mean, I do. I quite like tea, to be honest, but that's not the point. Let's just move on. The former G.U.N agents, played by Kid Cudi and Ellie Taylor, were really fun in a very cartoonish way. Same with Wade's bowling rival, Jack Sinclair, played by Julian Barrett. They weren't great, but they weren't that bad either. And when it comes to Wade's sister, played by Edie Patterson, I don't really know how to feel about. I mean, she's not an awful character by any means, but I do think that for a comedy character, she just isn't really that funny, and she does come across as a little bit too childish and immature. The scenes between her and Wade could have been genuinely really funny in a similar way to maybe something like Friends and what they do with Monica and Ross, and having them be really caring and loving for each other, but at the same time there is definitely a lot of deep-rooted sibling rivalry between them. That could have been really funny, and it could have been a really interesting aspect to explore, but the way that it's handled in this series, it just didn't work for me. I was also really disappointed in the main antagonist of this show, played by Rory McCann. He only appears a few times throughout the entire series, despite being the one behind everything. He is the buyer, but he barely has any build-up or rivalry built up with Knuckles. And while I do like his motivation and his backstory and how that ties together with Dr. Robotnik in the first Sonic the Hedgehog movie, I do think that it is disappointing that he isn't built up as a proper threat throughout this series. So when it comes to the final confrontation between him and Knuckles, in my opinion, it's not only anticlimactic, it's really short as well. And again, that is disappointing, and they should have done a lot more there. I've got to say, the other two agents feel more like the central antagonist, but even they disappear for a few episodes. So you don't feel that tension or dread that they're hot on Knuckles and Wade's trail. They can be fun, they do get some good fight scenes, and they do have a good motivation, but they were disappointing and don't feel threatening. And speaking of the action in the series, even though I don't think that this is anywhere near as action-packed as any of the three films, I do think that the action is pretty good overall, and it does have its moments. Most of the action throughout this series are fights between the characters, and I will say, they are fun, they are lively, and they do have a few moments of creativity, especially the brawl in the kitchen. That scene was really cool and very well choreographed, but again, we could have done with a lot more like it. On a side note, how on earth is this series rated a 12 over here in the UK? There is nothing 12 rated about it. This is a pushy PG at best. I mean, I was hoping that Sonic 3 was going to be a 12A, but oh well. One thing that I wasn't disappointed by in this series was the visual effects. That aspect of this series is honestly great. It's not quite as good or as polished as the stuff in the movies, and I will admit that some of the sequences involving green screen don't look that good, but I will still say that overall they are very good and they are very well detailed, especially how they've brought Knuckles to life. I had seen some people complaining online about how it is that Sonic and Tails look in this series. That takes me back to 2019. Honestly, I really don't get it. There's a couple of minor tweaks and changes here and there, more so to Tails, but they still look great and just as good as they do in the movies. Plus, they only appear in the first episode along with Maddie, so even if they didn't look as good as they did in the films, I don't think that it would really be a deal breaker. Or an egg breaker.
Let me show you the power of my latest, greatest creation.
I am so sorry, I couldn't help myself. Anyway, but it is great seeing both of them being a part of this series, and it is great hearing both Ben Schwartz and Colleen coming back to voice them, and I do like how it shows the aftermath of what happened during the second film. On a side note, I think it's really funny that once again they managed to sneak in another reference to Keanu Reeves and one of his movies during the sequence when Knuckles goes into Wade's bedroom and he's got posters all over his wall of different action action movies and comedies from the 80s and 90s, and one of the posters on his wall again is for Speed. I want to say Point Break as well for some reason, but I'm not sure why. They really wanted him in these movies, didn't they? And I'm glad they did. Speaking of that sequence, I am slightly baffled that they don't mention the Ninja Turtles. When Knuckles goes into Wade's bedroom, you see Wade's bed and his bed sheets are covered in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and Knuckles just doesn't acknowledge it. I think that could have been a really fun sequence, having Knuckles actually see the bed sheets, see the Ninja Turtles, and ask about them and say like, who are these mysterious teenage turtles of mutant ninja origin? They seem like formidable warriors. It wouldn't even need to be a throwaway moment. They could have had that play into the theme of family, and it could have helped Knuckles along his journey. Maybe by having him start to see Sonic and Tails as his brothers, or encouraging Wade to be more like the Ninja Turtles. I'm just spitballing here, but I definitely think that could have been something fun to include in this. Anyway, and lastly, when it comes to the music from composer Tom Howe, it's okay. This is definitely one area for improvement when it comes to the live-action Sonic franchise, and it has been fixed with Sonic 3, but unfortunately this does have the same problem as Sonic 1 and 2. It is fine overall, it's fitting and used well, but I don't think that it's anything too special. That being said, the songs that they picked to be a part of this series in a very Guardians of the Galaxy way, I do think are very good and very well utilised. Pretty much every song that is used in this series I do know or recognise, but when it comes to the main theme which plays over the opening title sequence is a song called The Warrior by Scandal and Patti Smith. I don't think I've actually heard it before, but I could be wrong. But I did like it and I added it to my playlist, and I do think that it was a really fun theme to use in this series and how it's used as well as the main theme. And I've got to admit, the opening titles are quite creative as well. Overall, yeah, I did find this disappointing. I wouldn't say that it was bad by any means, but it did leave me wanting more. I liked the cast and most of the performances. Yes, some of the characters are underutilised and could have done with some more screen time, while a few others probably could have been handled a bit differently. The effects are good, the action is fun, the music is fine, and there are some moments of proper creativity. But unfortunately, it does focus on the wrong story. It relegates the main character to the background. The comedy is more miss than hit. And on top of that, I don't think that this warranted being turned into a series. In my opinion, this could have worked just as well as a movie. I really wanted to enjoy this, and there are some things that I did. I have seen this series twice now, but my feelings haven't really changed on it. I liked some things, I didn't like others, but overall I would say that this series did leave me feeling a bit let down. If you are a fan of this character and the Sonic movies, it might be worth seeing if you are curious, and you can make up your own thoughts and feelings on it, but otherwise, I don't think that I could really recommend this. It isn't essential viewing if you want to understand the entire story behind the movies or Knuckles' character development, and I don't think that you need to see it to understand Sonic 3 outside of one and only one scene. This series is harmless family entertainment that you can watch with your kids, but it could and should have been much better. So with all that being said, my rating for Knuckles Season 1 is a 5 out of 10. I really do wish that this series was better, but it is what it is. But if you still have not seen this series and you are quite curious about it, please do not let me dissuade you from seeing it. Go and see it for yourself and make up your own mind. I'm actually quite tempted to maybe make a video all about what it is that I would rewrite about this series. You know what? I think I'm going to do it. It'll be something different at least. I'll keep you posted on it. It's probably going to be out in like early 2025 or so. So keep an eye out for it and let me know what you think. Well, that is pretty much everything I want to say for this video. So if you have watched this video, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this content, please like, subscribe, and be sure to punch that notification button. If you have seen Knuckles Season 1, let me know down in the comments what you think about it. Plus, if you have any suggestions for any future Rewind reviews you would like to see me do, let me know down below. And keep an eye out for my review for Sonic 3. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you in the next video. See you guys.